People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Craig Anderson.
And I'm Lou Quinto.
Lou, today we are going to be talking about giving your remote teams unstructured collaboration time. We are months and months into this remote work situation with no real end in sight. And we had that viewer question recently that things were kind of going back to the way they were. So there's still some opportunities to grow and change what we're doing here. So we thought we'd talk about today what to do to build collaboration. Maybe things are sliding back and people are getting back into old habits. So let's take a look and see.
We're doing it and talking about an unstructured collaboration.
Right.
So we might want to define that for our listeners, what we mean by unstructured collaboration.
Great question. For me, what we're really talking about is kind of those intentional collisions and unintentional collisions you had in the office, those hallway conversations, the opportunity if you were sitting in the same room together working on a project, starting to build back in that kind of unstructured, unplanned, but sometimes very productive collaboration time.
Sure.
That we've really lost during the time of COVID.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do.
Say that with such shock on your face during this time of COVID.
So we're going to break it down like we do into 3 different areas. So a couple different opportunities for you to build into this unstructured collaboration time. One is to set up a remote co-working space, create in Zoom or create in the whatever technology you're using to collaborate, create unstructured remote work co-working spaces for you to do that. 2, setting up a hot wall or an area where people can just visit the office and people can check in with them. And then 3, creating as one of the leaders of teams, open office hours, which, maybe you had a time when you were, well, we'll get into it, but talking about setting into some
I was going to say, I'm just sitting here. Why don't you just go ahead and describe all 3 points? And then I'll just say, well, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership.
This is quality. We get it. You get it, the short version and the long version. So why don't you talk a little bit more about the remote co-working space, Lou?
Okay. Virtual co-working. Some people, Craig, even at work, we just like to be in our cube all by ourselves, have our headphones on, and just be focusing on what we're doing. But there are lots of people who would go ahead and reserve a conference room where 2 or 3 people could work together at one time. And yeah, they were quiet. It was almost like a study hall. They were quiet, but if they had a question that they wanted to ask, they could ask it immediately, and there would be someone there on the team to be able to answer them. And with that virtual co-working, one of the recommendations is to get together with that 1 or 2 people that you might be working with something on a project and just set up your virtual conference room with, on Zoom, WebEx, whatever platform you're using. And you don't have to be constantly talking with each other, but it's on. So that as you're doing the work, if you've got a question, I could say, Craig, I'm looking at this report from last month, and take a look with me over on page 5. And that person is right there to be able to help coordinate with you and to give you that feedback, as opposed to writing it down and waiting to talk to Craig later on. And so I like to call that virtual co-working almost like a study hall, where you had a group of people who were in a room, they were working quietly, but if they had a quick question, they could go ahead and they can get the question answered.
And what I like about that approach is if you're sitting back at home working and then somebody pops up or pops in, that feels more like, hey, I'm really interrupting you, to pop up a video in the middle of your work time. To have it where you've already kind of established kind of that room for people to talk if they need to, but otherwise you're just kind of plowing through the project. I like that. I think there's probably more, as we're talking here, a lot more collaboration that way, because you're not going to be, well, I'm not going to call them yet. I'm going to wait till I have 8 questions or whatever before I interrupt. So
and again, it's not like you're going to have your virtual platform open the entire day. You can get together with that 1 other person or 3 other people and say, look, let's go ahead and do this together. It doesn't have to be a meeting. Let's all work on what we need to do. But if we need to share or interact, we can do it very quickly. And let's schedule on our time, an hour, hour and a half, whatever it might be. And again, you don't need to have your camera on. It's just you're listening. to what
Yeah.
people are saying. And then when people are talking and you need to answer them, turn your camera on. So yeah, that's what that
Perfect.
virtual co-working is like. So that leads us into the next second, which is a very exciting area because it's called hot walls, but it's also known as the wormhole. And you being the big sci-fi freak that you are, what the heck is a wormhole? And how
Yeah.
do I apply it to a virtual environment?
This idea is a little bit of a mixed bag. This idea that you set up a monitor and a monitor, let me date myself, a big CRT monitor that's like this wide. No, you've set up your cam and
Big
your
screen
screen and
TV.
big screen TV.
Yeah.
And you're just there. It's kind of, if you're visiting remote, in the old days, if you're visiting into the office, maybe you're a place where a lot of people come by and check in on you because they don't get to see you in person that often. So this was an opportunity, if you've got some people in the office and some people remote still, for that remote worker to have opportunities to just converse with people. Maybe it's over the lunch hour, so it's an interesting idea. I think it also, as you said, scare the bejeebers out of me, turning around a corner and staring into a screen of a giant face like, so I'm not 100% on board with this idea yet.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, and this would be a situation, obviously, where you had some people working remotely and some people working at the office, which I think is, and you and I have talked about, may be an environment that we are finding ourselves in very shortly, where for protection reasons, we're only going to have half the people work on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The other half's going to work on Tuesday and Thursday, and then they're going to shift back and forth into the office. But to have in the break room or have in the cafeteria, where if I want to eat my lunch at home, but I want to feel like I'm in the cafeteria and look and see people, there's a screen up there that has a camera that just shows the cafeteria or shows the break room. And if I see someone, I can yell and wave to them. I'm not too high on that idea, but people are doing it. People are doing it. So it's not like we're advocating this. We're just talking about unstructured ways that people can work in a virtual environment.
Yeah.
So, which leads us to the last area. And this one makes a lot more sense. And that's the open office hours. And that is, as the leader of the team, the project manager, whoever it is, once a week for an hour, you just turn your computer on and people can pop in and out anytime they want to, as if you were just sitting there in your office and you had office hours like the old professor. If you want to visit me, I've got office hours between 2 and 3. And between 2 and 3, they just sat there and didn't do anything, because no student I know actually went to visit the professor. But this would be a situation where you could go ahead and you can have people just know that you're going to be open. That's 2 hours of free time for you. You're working unless someone pops into your office and says, hey, I need help. I got a question. What do you think about this? And you can share screens and do all kinds of stuff. So this is something that I think works very well.
No, I agree. This, I think, is a great idea. I used to carve out time throughout the day to sit in the kind of break area and do some work that I could get brought in and out of, right? And, maybe filling expense reports or something fairly easy, and just have the opportunity to interact with employees. So I think this is a way for, again, to go back to that earlier point, where people can interact with you casually without feeling like they're interrupting you, because you've actually set up this time as a time for you to be just, hey, I'm here. Let me know what questions you have. Just to touch base, it's a great opportunity for the leader to get a pulse check on what's going on.
Right.
So of all these ideas, that is probably my favorite, because I think it's a great way for leaders to make sure they're staying in touch in a much more casual way that I think is important right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So key takeaways when it comes to an virtual unstructured collaboration.
One, big screen in the break room with just some rando sitting there all day. No, I just don't think I can get behind that. I suppose there's probably ways to do that. Maybe if you set it up in a small conference room and people say, hey, I want to check in. But yeah, that one takes a little bit of tweaking for me.
Yeah.
But the message of making sure people are able to connect and interact and creating places for them to be able to do that and processes for them to be able to do that, I think is really crucial. As this continues to wear on, people are going to need to stay in touch. And I think that's a great way for people to get focused.
Yeah. No, my key takeaway is, even though we laughed about one or two of them, it shows the creativity and the innovation that companies and leaders are going to to create that unstructured format for collaboration of teams. Because as we've talked about in every episode that we've done on remote workforce, the last thing you want to do is make people feel like they're off on an island all by themselves. And
Right.
so that collaboration is so important in an individual. Social contact is so important during your day, your business day, that you want to have that. And my key takeaway is I applaud the companies at their ingenuity on how can we create these unstructured. And when we say unstructured, it's not we're having a Zoom meeting from 9 till 10. That's structured. What can we do to create those, I'm going to use it, intentional collisions, but in an unstructured way? The old
Right.
coffee pot, water cooler, break room, where people, let's face it, we all have had lots of discussions around the coffee pot, in the break
Mhm.
room, in the cafeteria, that have led to some significant things.
Yeah.
So my key takeaway is I applaud the ingenuity and the creativity that a lot of companies are having.
Perfect.
So
Very good.
anyway, if you like today's episode when it comes to creating a virtual, unstructured way of creating collaboration, we hope that you will like, share, or subscribe to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. In addition to that, we are available for download on all of your major podcast platforms. So until next time, keep your hands washed, keep your distance. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson.